Trump administration family separation policy history. Bush administration. President George W. Bush began the trend of a zero-tolerance approach in 2005 with Operation Streamline, but during his administration, exceptions were generally made for adults traveling with minors. Obama administration. U.S. President Barack Obama made changes to immigration policy, releasing parents and focusing on deportation of immigrants who committed crimes in the U.S. attempting to cope with the 2014 American immigration crisis, a surge of refugees fleeing violence in Central America, while complying with the 1997 Flores v. Reno Settlement Agreement consent decree by keeping families together. Under Obama, the Department of Homeland Security built family detention centers in Pennsylvania, New Mexico, and Texas. In 2015, Obama introduced the Family Case Management Program, which, according to the fact sheet about the program, specifically prioritized families with certain vulnerabilities, including pregnant or nursing family member, those with very young children, family members with medical/mental health concerns, families who speak only indigenous languages, and other special needs, to offer an alternative to being held in detention centers while awaiting the court to process their asylum claims, which often takes years. In 2016, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in Flores v. Lynch that detained immigrant children should be released as quickly as possible, but that parents were not required to be freed. The Obama administration complied by releasing women and children after detaining them together for 21 days. Trump administration. Presidential candidate Donald Trump said ending catch and release was the second of his two priorities for immigration reform, after walling off Mexico. When the administration began separating families, pro-Trump pundits argued that the administration was implementing the same policy as the Obama administration. According to PolitiFact, the assertion that Trump was implementing the same policy as Obama is false, noting Obama's immigration policy specifically sought to avoid breaking up families. While some children were separated from their parents under Obama, this was relatively rare and families were quickly reunited, even if that meant the release of a parent from detention. The Obama administration did consider separating families, but decided against it. Refusal to accept asylum seekers at border crossings. In January 2017, the American Immigration Council and 5 other advocacy organizations filed a complaint with the Department of Homeland Security's Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties protesting the systemic denial of entry to asylum seekers. It is not legal for the U.S. to deny anyone the right to seek asylum. Nonetheless, according to advocacy lawyers, asylum seekers presenting at border crossings were denied for a variety of reasons, including the daily quota has been reached, that they needed to present a visa, or that they needed to schedule an appointment through Mexican authorities, none of which are accurate. One nonprofit organization spokesperson commented, "We've basically arrived at a place where applying for asylum is not available to most people." The Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General concluded that this practice, which it calls metering legal entry, leads some aliens who would otherwise seek legal entry into the United States to cross the border illegally. The administration also canceled the Central American Minors Program, CAM, which had given the hope to parents that they would be able to bring their child into the U.S. legally, ending the parole portion of the program in August 2017 and no longer accepting new applications for the refugee portion of the program as of November 9, 2017. The CAM program had allowed some parents to bring their children legally to the U.S. since 2015, with the children gaining the right to apply for citizenship if they were granted special refugee status. Due to the processing delays, the program had not offered relief for those who faced the threat of immediate danger, yet at the level of the individual families it had made it less attractive to bring children illegally, as there was the prospect of legal entry. DHS pilot program in 2017. From July to October 2017, the Trump administration ran what the DHS called a pilot program for zero tolerance in El Paso. Families were separated, including families that were seeking asylum, and children were then reclassified as unaccompanied and sent into a network of shelters with no system created to reunite them with their parents. The existence of this early pilot program first became widely known in June 2018, with reporting by NBC News from information by DHS. In May 2018, NPR spoke with a director at the Young Center for Immigrant Children's Rights, an agency that advocates for the children's best interests. Asked if staff had noticed an increase in children coming in with parents and then separated from them at the border, the director told NPR, "We noticed as early as late spring of 2017, and through the winter and now the spring of this year, we have seen a significant number of children referred to us for the appointment of a child advocate for kids taken from their parents at the border." According to an April 2018 memo obtained by The Washington Post, the government viewed the El Paso experiment as successful in that it showed a 64% drop in apprehensions, while apprehensions began to rise in October when it was paused. This experiment was eventually used by ICE, CBP, and SIS to launch the Zero Tolerance program across the entire southwest border in April. Proposals of family separation as a means to deter immigration. 2 weeks after President Trump was inaugurated on January 20, 2017, the administration reviewed the idea of separating immigrant children from their mothers as a way to deter asylum seekers. In March 2017, it was first reported that the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, was considering a proposal to separate parents from their children if they were caught attempting to cross the border into the United States. John Kelly, then Secretary of Homeland Security, confirmed that the policy was under consideration, but later denied it. Speaking on Democracy Now!, the director of the National Immigration Law Center said that the policy, if implemented, would amount to state-sanctioned violence against children, against families that are coming to the United States to seek safety, and that the administration did not act with transparency in explaining what was being proposed. The American Academy of Pediatrics, AAP, issued a statement to address media reports of the plan. "We urge policymakers to always be mindful that these are vulnerable, scared children, and they offered to assist Homeland Security in crafting immigration procedures that protect children." In March, more than a month prior to the official zero-tolerance decision, the ACLU filed a class-action lawsuit against the Trump administration, charging that the administration was illegally separating hundreds of children from their parents while the parents awaited asylum proceedings. On April 5, the DHS said they were no longer considering the policy, partly due to the steep decline in mothers attempting to travel to the U.S. with their children. However, Attorney General Jeff Sessions then ordered an escalation of federal prosecutions. Parents were being charged with misdemeanors and jailed while their children were classed as unaccompanied and placed under DHS care. Within 5 months, hundreds of children were reported to have been separated from their parents. In late April 2018, the media reported that a review of government data found that about 700 migrant children, more than 100 of them under the age of 4, had been taken from their parents since October 2017. At that time, Department of Homeland Security officials said they did not split families to deter immigration but rather to protect the best interests of minor children crossing our borders, saying it would save $12 million a year. In June, the Trump administration ended the Family Case Management Program, which kept asylum-seeking mothers and their children out of detention. By December, after a new surge in families crossing the southern border, the DHS was again considering the policy to separate children from parents. In January 2018, following testimony from Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen in which she refused to rule out implementing the proposed policy of the separation of parents from their children, more than 200 child welfare organizations released a letter calling for the Trump administration to abandon plans to forcibly separate children from their parents at the U.S. border. The letter said, in part, "We know that this policy would have significant and long-lasting consequences for the safety, health, development, and well-being of children. Children need to be cared for by their parents to be safe and healthy, to grow and develop. Forced separation disrupts the parent-child relationship and puts children at increased risk for both physical and mental illness." The administration's plan would eviscerate the principle of family unity and put children in harm's way. Administration issues zero-tolerance policy. On April 6, 2018, Attorney General Jeff Sessions directed federal prosecutors to adopt immediately a zero-tolerance policy for all offenses related to the misdemeanor of improper entry into the United States, and that this zero-tolerance policy shall supersede any existing policies. This would aim to criminally convict first-time offenders when historically they would face civil and administrative removal, while criminal convictions were usually reserved for those who committed the felony of illegal re-entry after removal. On May 7, 2018, Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced, "If you cross the border unlawfully, then we will prosecute you. If you smuggle an illegal alien across the border, then we'll prosecute you. If you're smuggling a child, then we're going to prosecute you, and that child will be separated from you, probably, as required by law. Multiple media accounts, as well as direct testimony from detained migrants to members of Congress, reported that immigrant families presenting themselves at ports of entry seeking asylum were also being separated. Speaking on Face the Nation on June 17, Senator Susan Collins said that the Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen had testified before the Senate that asylum seekers with families would not be separated if they presented themselves at a legal port of entry, yet, there are numerous credible media accounts showing that exactly that is happening, and the administration needs to put an end to that right off. Later in the day Nielsen tweeted, "We do not have a policy of separating families at the border. Period. The policy is notably unpopular, more so than any other major bill or executive action in recent memory." Poll aggregates show that approximately 25% of Americans supported the policy, although a majority of Republicans supported it. Following the May announcement, dozens of protest demonstrations were held, attracting thousands. In Washington, D.C., Democratic members of Congress marched in protest. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights called for the Trump administration to immediately halt its policy of separating children from their parents, and human rights activists have criticized that the policy, insofar as it is also applied to asylum seekers, defies Article 31 of the Refugee Convention. Zero tolerance policy reversed. Despite previously asserting that you can't reverse the policy through an executive order, on June 20, 2018, Trump bowed to intense political pressure and signed an executive order to reverse the policy while still maintaining zero-tolerance border control by detaining entire families together. Asked by a reporter why he had taken so long to sign the order, Trump asserted, "It's been going on for 60 years. 60 years. Nobody has taken care of it. Nobody has had the political courage to take care of it. But we're going to take care of it." When it became clear that zero tolerance could not be sustained while keeping families together within the scope of court rulings, Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Kevin McCalley announced on June 25 that the agency would cease referring every person caught crossing the border illegally for prosecution, effectively ending the zero tolerance policy. Implementing zero tolerance was a huge challenge operationally for our agents, McCalley said. Border Patrol stations were being overwhelmed by the number of children being held in crowded conditions in holding cells while their parents were processed in court and held in immigration detention, and agents were spending more time processing detained immigrants than guarding the border. On June 26, a federal court ordered the government to reunify separated families within 30 days. On September 20, 2018, the government reported to the court that it had reunified or otherwise released 2,167 of the 2,551 children over 5 years of age who were separated from a parent and deemed eligible for reunification by the government.